What's up, guys? And today, back with another video, probably a short one, but we're taking a look at the playoff race after week 9 of college football. Very eventful week in the playoff race, and we'll see how it shakes up. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you love college football, you'll love my channel as I talk about college football. Please consider subscribing. But today, we'll look at the playoff race and look who's eliminated. If you're new to this, my elimination rules are 2 losses, you're out. Penn State didn't make it in 2016. I don't think a 2-loss team will ever make it. Now, hypothetically, they could, but it just hasn't happened yet. And until it happens, 2 losses eliminated. So undefeated and 1-loss teams. Let's get into it. The undefeated teams. At the undefeated teams, I have 6 of them. Georgia, undefeated. Beat Florida this past weekend. Tennessee, undefeated. Beat Kentucky this past weekend, 44-6. The Ohio State Buckeyes, undefeated, beat Penn State this past weekend, 44-31. Michigan, undefeated, beat Michigan State this past weekend, 29-6. TCU beat West Virginia this past weekend, undefeated. TCU beat West Virginia this past weekend, 41-31. And Clemson, undefeated, had a bye week this last season. Those are your 6 undefeated teams, 9 weeks into the season. Now let's look at our 1-loss teams, of which there are 7. Alabama, with only 1 loss. That loss coming to Tennessee, 52-49. This past weekend, they had a bye. Ole Miss, only 1 loss. That loss coming to LSU. This past weekend, they beat Texas A&M, 31-28. North Carolina, only 1 loss. That loss coming by a lot to Notre Dame, a pretty bad loss. This past weekend, they beat Pitt, 42-24, pretty convincing fashion. Now, North Carolina, I'm not too high on them, but I mean, if they win out, they'll go to the ACC championship and they'll play Clemson, and that's a playoff game right there. That's a chance to get into the playoff if they win out. Illinois, 1 loss. Their 1 loss coming to Indiana. They beat up on Nebraska this past weekend, 29-6. Oregon, only 1 loss. That loss coming to That loss coming to Georgia by an abysmal 46 points. This past weekend, they beat Cal, 42-24. USC, 1 loss. Their 1 loss coming to Utah in an extremely close game, 43-42. This past weekend, they beat Arizona, 45-37. And our last 1-loss team, UCLA, their 1 loss coming to 1-loss Oregon. This past weekend, they beat Stanford, 38-13. That is all our teams. Total, that leaves us 13 teams left. Last week, we had 17 teams. Now we have 13 teams. That means 4 teams were eliminated. Let's look at them. Wake Forest was eliminated by Louisville. Wake Forest taking their 2nd loss of the season. I was high on Wake Forest. Their only loss was to undefeated Clemson. I was really high, but this last weekend, they got obliterated by a mediocre Louisville team. Just a terrible, terrible loss, and that will all but finish their college football playoff chances. And they were slim even with 1 loss, with that loss coming to Clemson in their division. Syracuse was eliminated as they lost to Notre Dame, taking their 2nd loss of the season. Again, another team that only had 1 loss to Clemson. Looked good. Looked like they had a chance, but no, Notre Dame beat them. Oklahoma State eliminated. And oh boy, were they eliminated. Eliminated by Kansas State this past weekend. 48-0. Oklahoma got destroyed by Kansas State. 48-0. Jeez. And that ends Oklahoma State's playoff chances. And Penn State eliminated by Ohio State. Can't even blame Penn State too much. Their 2 losses coming to undefeated Michigan and undefeated Ohio State. But that is 2 losses nonetheless, as 4 teams have been eliminated this week. let's look at the totals by conference. Like I said, the total amount of teams is 13. The SEC, they have 2 undefeated teams left in Georgia and Tennessee, and 4 teams total. The ACC has 1 undefeated team left in Clemson and 2 teams total. The Big Ten has 2 undefeated teams in Michigan and Ohio State. Now, Michigan and Ohio State will have to play at the end of the season, rivalry week, of course. Just like the SEC, Georgia and Tennessee will have to play this weekend, which will have huge effects on the college football race and could potentially eliminate, even with 1 loss, could eliminate the team that doesn't make it. Then, like I said, Big Ten, 2 undefeated teams, 3 teams total. Big 12, only 1 team left. That 1 team is undefeated TCU, but the only team left in the Big 12 with a playoff chance. And the Pac-12 has no undefeated teams left, but 3 teams total in Oregon, USC, and UCLA. That is how the playoff race looks after Week 9. What do you think? How do you think playoff race will shake out? And what do you think? Leave me a comment below. Peace out.